Okay, we have about 15 more minutes, and then you will be dismissed until tonight. So, in July of 2021, 2 American missionaries were killed in a private plane crash, leaving their widows to raise multiple children. Can you hear me now? Okay. In July of 2021, 2 American missionaries were killed in a plane crash in Haiti, leaving their widows with multiple children to raise. And God pierced my heart for them, so I tracked them down. There was nothing on the internet of how to support them, but I tracked it down and was able to do something personally for them. But that started a little bit of a journey for me that I'm going to take you on for a little bit. Now, before we go there, I want to let you know that I have worked in international humanitarian relief work for decades on and off. So, this has been a new, just another perspective for me. And isn't that just like God? You know, we think we understand the context of things, and then he shows us another angle of it. So just go with me on this journey. I want you to imagine a woman. She stands beside a dying fire. Her hands are trembling as she presses the last handful of flour into a small cake of bread. Her son, hungry, silent, watching, knows what she knows. This is the end. No food, no hope. No one sees him, but God sees. And he sends his prophet, Elijah, not to a palace, not to a king, but to her, a widow in Zarephath, modern-day Lebanon. A mother, a woman with nothing. She opens the door, she hears the prophet's request, and in a moment of great courage, she gives him what little she has. And God performs a miracle. The flour never runs out. The oil never runs dry. She and her household live, and Elijah's needs are met too. Her story, of course, in 1 Kings 17, isn't just ancient history, it's a mirror. It's a mirror of the crisis of millions of women that are widows and what they face today. It's really a hidden crisis, one that spans continents, cultures, generations, and it wears the face of a widow. Just for context, there are over 258 million widows worldwide. Let that number sink into you, 258 million. And nearly 1 in 7, roughly 39 million, live in extreme poverty. I'm talking about pennies a day. In many regions, these women, often grieving and vulnerable, are invisible to systems, overlooked by society, dismissed by culture. For many of these women, widowhood isn't just the loss of a spouse, but it's the loss of security, the loss of identity, the loss of dignity, the loss of protection. In many parts of Africa, widowhood is compounded by injustice. In some regions, half of all adult women are widowed due to conflict, disease, tribal violence, due to superstition. Many are disinherited when their husbands die. They're forced to leave their homes. They're blamed for their husbands' deaths due to superstition. Some endure shaming rituals. They're considered unclean, not fit for remarriage, no matter their age. They're viewed as a burden instead of a blessing. And this pushes many into unimaginable poverty, desperation, simply for surviving their spouse. In South Asia, Christian women face a double stigma, rejected both for their faith and widowhood. Seen as cursed, literally, they're pushed into the margins, banned from celebrations, denied inheritance, left to beg on the streets, live in isolation. Some are forced into degrading rituals or remarried against their will just to survive. In the Middle East, war and persecution have turned widowhood into a humanitarian emergency. Many families have fled their homelands due to targeted violence and religious persecution. And when the husbands die, often due to conflict or displacement, their widows are left alone, vulnerable, and without a support structure. These widows are raising children in refugee camps or temporary shelters, often without documentation, legal standing, or the ability to claim property, aid, or even basic rights. Many have fled with nothing but hope and live day to day, really in survival mode. In Latin America, cartel and gang violence leaves behind countless young widows. Many live in fear, navigating trauma and poverty with children depending on them. These widows often have little to no access to justice and limited opportunities to find work. No wonder so many cross our border. Or community support. Some are targeted for extortion, even exploited, while others are left to raise families in areas filled with unchecked violence. And in the U.S., over 11 million widows face a quieter struggle. And if you add to that, women whose marriages have died through divorce, that number explodes. The average age a woman becomes a widow in America, can you guess? It's only 59. For many, that begins a second chapter, not of peace, but of pain, managing grief, finances, and sometimes exclusion from the very communities they helped build. And these numbers, they don't just describe elderly women. Across the globe, millions of widows are in their 30s, 40s, even 20s, often raising children without support, and the ripple effect is generational. Because when a widow is forgotten, her children are too. Many drop out of school, many are vulnerable for trafficking, child marriage, or radicalization. And let's be clear, widowhood is not a footnote in the story, it is the headline. But God sees and God cares. From the earliest pages of Scripture, in Exodus 22:22, God says he is a defender of the widows. When he formed the nation of Israel, he hardwired widow care into their law, commanding that the fatherless and the widow share in the harvest, be included in celebrations, and be treated with dignity and justice. In the first chapter of Isaiah, God rebukes the nation for its injustice and calls his people, among other things, to plead the case of the widow. In the New Testament, we see that his heart continue. Consider, if you will, Acts chapter 6. The early church made widow care one of the first leadership priorities, establishing deacons not to preach, but to ensure widows weren't overlooked. In 1 Timothy 5, Paul gives detailed instructions and quite a bit of the page about the care and honor and support of widows. And of course, we've talked about James 1:27 a few times today. It's a keystone verse. It says, "Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world." This isn't charity. This isn't optional. It's the very essence of pure religion. Throughout the Bible, we see not only commands, but we see examples. Stories like stories of widows restored and honored. I think about, of course, Ruth and Naomi. Both were widowed, both were impoverished, yet God guided them to Boaz. And through that faithful line came King David and eventually Jesus himself. Think of Abigail. Her husband Nabal died in his wickedness, but God saw her wisdom and strength and elevated her to be a wife of King David. And think again of the widow of Zarephath. God could have sent Elijah anywhere, but he sent him to her. That's not coincidence. That's divine intention. God never writes widows out of the story. He's placed them smack dab in the center. And today, God is still writing stories of hope. At Somebody Cares, we've long included widows in our disaster relief, community outreach, and ministry support work. We've walked with widows, prayed with them, helped them, and seen God restore lives. But recently, we felt God prompting us to be even more intentional. So we created a dedicated widow and orphan fund. This fund allows us to respond quickly and compassionately when we hear of urgent needs from our trusted ministry partners. For instance, when a pastor's young wife in Kenya was suddenly left alone with 3 children after her husband was killed while ministering in a remote village, our partners were there, they let us know about it, and we were able to respond with tangible help quickly, providing support for a year while she processes the grief and seeks God on what their future is going to look like. After the recent earthquake in Myanmar, we heard Christian widows who had already been living in despair. Their husbands had been forcefully taken and died during years of civil war, and persecution, they were left penniless, stripped of security, some of them so distraught that they attempted to take their own lives. The earthquake lifted the veil on their struggles. We would never have known without it, and provided an opening to help. We were able to send some emergency aid specifically for the widows, providing food, shelter, stability, and hope in Jesus' name. When widows in Africa came to a church, one of our church partners needing not just help but a hand up, we sent support to them to start small businesses, secure safe shelter, and more, restoring their dignity and their ability to provide for their families. And recently, when the widow of the former SomebodyCares Caribbean director was facing grief, medical expenses, funeral costs, final arrangements, we were there, not just with financial support, but with love and honor for a life well served. And of course, here in the United States, many of you are involved with this. It's really no different. Our network of churches and community partners have made sure widows aren't forgotten, especially during the isolating days of the pandemic. From delivering groceries and hot meals to offering prayer during times of heartbreak, helping repair homes, simply including them in community gatherings during the holidays, we've helped widows rediscover connection and belonging as we met their real needs. So through our partners, through God's grace, we are reminding them that you're not forgotten. You are seen, you are deeply loved, and God still has a plan for your life. So let me ask you, who are the widows in your life, in your church, in your community? Who are the women carrying the silent weight of grief while raising children, managing bills, or walking into empty houses? And what about those you've never met in Sudan, Lebanon, Mexico, Nigeria, and numerous other nations around the globe whose husbands died for the gospel or in the shadows of war, pandemic, or tragedy? God sees them. Do we? James 1:27 doesn't say, this is nice. It's nice if you do this. It says, this is pure religion. So what can we do? What can we do? It's huge. Well, we can see them, open our eyes, ask the questions. Do we know widows in our midst? We can give to organizations like SomebodyCares and World Challenge that intentionally help widows globally. Your support could be the miracle that keeps a family from collapsing. We can invite a widow to dinner, offer help with her car, babysit her kids, listen, honor her presence. We can advocate, raise awareness in our churches, communities, and government. And we can pray, not just God, help them, but God, use me. The world may overlook widows, but God never does. What if the church was known not for its music or its events, but for the way we honor widows and the fatherless and the oppressed? Imagine every widow being able to say, when I needed help, God sent his people, and that they would be re-envisioned with purpose. If you want more ideas of how you can be more intentional in this area, I'd be honored to talk with you. I have some good examples of what others are doing in their communities in answer to this call. But I would just say and leave you with this: let us be the flour that doesn't run out. Let us be the oil that never runs dry. Let us be Elijah to the widows in our midst.